Hello and happy Easter, everyone. Welcome. Really glad that you're here. Welcome to all of you in the room. Welcome to all of you online. Welcome to all of you in one of our overflow spaces. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for worshiping with us. I'm glad there's a good crowd of people in there as well. He is risen. He is risen indeed. And I'm so glad we get to celebrate it together. One of my favorite movies is a film that I've learned many people have never seen. It's a Disney film. It's called The Greatest Game Ever Played, in which Shia LaBeouf plays amateur golfer Francis Ouimet, who won the 1913 U.S. Open. And all the golf fans are thinking, that's great. And everyone else is going, what? When he was 4 years old, Ouimet's working-class family moved into a house across the street from Brookline Country Club. So when he was 11, Francis began working as a caddy at the club, and that sparked an interest in golf. So with borrowed clubs, with golf balls he found around the course, Ouimet learned to play the game and eventually became the top amateur in the state. And the movie is largely about how he defeated some of the best professional golfers in the world for the 1913 U.S. Open title. Now, as an amateur, Ouimet could not receive prize money. So his hardworking French-Canadian father had real trouble understanding why Francis gave so much time to golf. Why would his son obsess over a game that did not produce an income? He wanted Francis to turn his focus away from golf to some kind of honest work. And in the movie, that difference of opinion becomes a serious disagreement. And if you want to see how it turns out, you should watch that movie. But that disconnect between father and son reminds me of one of the most compelling stories in the Bible. Charles Dickens, who was a pretty solid storyteller himself, said this story is the greatest short story ever written, and I'm sure he's right. We know it as the story of the prodigal son or the lost son. It's found in Luke chapter 15 of our New Testament. It's actually part of three short stories that Jesus tells back to back in response to criticism that he was receiving from spiritual elitists who thought he spent too much time with sinful people. The religious professors, the religious power brokers of Jesus' day fell into the trap that has claimed many religious leaders through history. Rather than realizing that the heart of God is to bring lost people home to himself, they pointed to those broken people and they compared themselves to them and did so favorably. Instead of thinking, if not for God's grace, that might be me. If not for God's guidance and instruction, that could be me. Instead, they applauded themselves for being spiritually, morally superior. And this is why Luke chapter 15 begins with these words. Tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. Now notice that phrase, notorious sinners. Tax collectors were frowned upon because they collected taxes on behalf of the Roman government, and there was great resentment for the Romans. Other notorious sinners. If Luke had been writing that in English, then he would have placed quotation marks around those words. And you know, it wasn't completely false. People who had separated themselves from God with sinful choices, people who were living broken lifestyles, those people did enjoy being around Jesus, and they did listen to Jesus teach. And it wasn't because Jesus told them that they were doing nothing wrong. It wasn't because Jesus insinuated that their sin didn't matter or that their sins really weren't sins. Jesus never compromised God's truth. But notorious sinners still wanted to hear Jesus because he conveyed God's concern for them and God's desire to forgive them. And they could tell that Jesus loved them even when he didn't approve of their choices. So Jesus told three stories about lost things so that lost people would know that God wanted them to come home, and so that stuffy, prideful religious people would remember why God had given them their roles to begin with. The first story was about a man who had 100 sheep, but who left 99 of them to go find one sheep that wandered away. And when he found the sheep, he didn't beat it with a shepherd's staff. He didn't even verbally scold it. You notice how we talk to animals as if they understand every word we're saying? He hoisted that lamb onto his shoulders and he carried it back to the flock. He took it home. And Jesus made a point of saying that he did it joyfully. So here's a lamb who gets itself lost by being stupid, but the owner finds it and brings it back home. And by the way, the owner is so happy that instead of complaining to his wife that he had to go find that dumb lamb again, or suggesting to his wife, maybe lamb chops for dinner would be really good tonight, he invites his neighbors and his friends to his house to celebrate the fact that he's found this lamb. Now look, he couldn't just text them or call them. They didn't have that technology. Inviting your friends to celebrate actually took a lot of effort. You had to go to them and invite them. He did that. That's how important the celebration of this lamb's homecoming was for him. Now remember again who's listening to this story. One group were the people who had wandered away from God. The other was the religious folk who judged them instead of helping them find their way back to God. One were lost lambs, the other group, unfaithful shepherds. And ironically, the out crowd, the people who are supposedly further away from God, are eating up Jesus' story. The in crowd, they are scowling at Jesus the whole time he's talking. So then, having made his point, Jesus moves on, right? No. He immediately launches into a second story about another lost thing. This time, it was a coin. A woman had 10 silver coins, but she lost one. That happens, right? I mean, how recently have you misplaced a credit card? How recently have you lost some cash or a piece of jewelry or your car keys? Some of you aren't even sure how you got here. You lose your car keys so often, you're actually surprised you're here today. Last year, I finished an out-of-town meeting, and I realized I had a couple hours before dark, and I really wanted to use that time to exercise. So I rented a bicycle, and I went for a ride. And I didn't have time to change into workout clothes, so I signed a rental form, jumped on a bike in my street clothes, and according to the app on my phone, I covered about 18 miles before I returned with the bike. Well, after the ride, I reached for my wallet, and it wasn't there. It had fallen out of my pocket while I was riding the bike, which is why smart people don't ride a bicycle with a wallet in their back pockets. Now, the good news is I knew exactly where I'd been on the bike. The bad news is there was 18 miles of it. So even though it was getting dark, I did a version of what the woman who lost the coin did. She used a broom and she systematically swept her floor, knowing that she would look at every inch of the flooring in her house and she would find her coin. Well, I started retracing my route. I asked people along the way, did you happen to see a brown wallet? And figuratively speaking, I swept the house and did not find my wallet. Someone else found my wallet and returned it to a place where I could get it, minus the cash. And that part was a little disappointing, but frankly, I had planned to give the person the cash that I had as a reward. So maybe the person was a mind reader and thought, this Eddie guy probably wants me to have this as a reward. In Jesus' second story, guess what the woman did when she found her missing coin? Her response was the same as the shepherd who found his wandering sheep. She threw a party and celebrated, and Jesus threw in an explanation, an application, kind of a cosmic application of what she did. He said, by the way, the angels in heaven celebrate when even one lost person makes his or her way back to God. Did you know that you could be the cause of celebration in heaven as you begin to take steps back toward God? So now Jesus has told two stories about lost things. They both have been very effective. So making his point in such a strong way and even reiterating it, he decided to let it go, right? No. He told a third story, a longer story, a more poignant story about a lost son, a prodigal. And if you're wondering why I would choose to highlight this story on Easter Sunday, we will find the answer to that question in 2 words of this story that Jesus tells, and I'll let you know when we get to them. Let's read Luke 15, starting at verse 11. Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to the field to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. Now, it's hard to avoid disliking this younger son a bit because his attitude is so poor and his treatment of his father is really disrespectful. I mean, essentially he's saying, "Dad, I know I'm going to get part of what you have after you die, but since you're still around and kicking, I'd like my inheritance now." That's rude. That's crass. That's unloving and selfish. And it plays out exactly how just about all of us would expect. His father humbly gives him the equivalent of his inheritance. He heads off to the city, invests in Tesla, becomes a billionaire, and his life goes wonderfully, right? No, he parties. He opens a bar tab for everyone, and he has lots of friends as long as he's buying. He throws it away, and much worse, he throws himself away in the process. And he suffers really the ultimate indignity for a Jewish man. The Jews considered pigs to be the most unclean of animals. He has to take a job feeding pigs. And he'd really like to eat what they're eating. That's how destitute he was. I think one reason this story resonated with Jesus' listeners, and now 2,000 years later, this story still resonates with us, I think it's because so many parts of it are so realistic. And some of us, if we're old enough, are actually looking back on our own stories and saying, well, my story's not exactly like that, but there are some similarities. And you know, it had to be painful for the father in this story because you know, as an older, wiser man who'd seen a lot of life, who's seen a lot of people make a lot of decisions, he knew what was going to happen. He knew his son had a wild streak. He expected this to go badly. And a father like that might be tempted to say, as his son stuffs his pockets with money, taking his stuff out, thinking he's going to conquer the world, a father would be tempted to say, one last thing before you go. If you waste your money, make a mess of your life, don't come crawling back to me for help. You know the father was tempted to say that. And most of us would say, well, he had a right to say that, but apparently he did not say that. Why? He wasn't that kind of father. Well, the younger son apparently knew that as he longed to eat what the pigs were eating. He'd been foolish about many things, but deep down, he knew he had an extraordinary father. Look at verse 17. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired men have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I'll set out, I'll go back to my father, and I'll say to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son, so make me like one of your hired men.'" And then he does the first thing in this story that we can admire. So he got up and went to his father. There is a difference between doing foolish things and being a fool. A fool won't change course. But a person who simply makes foolish choices will eventually own it and change directions. So this becomes a defining moment in which this young man's life turns from a great tragedy to a great recovery. And what allowed that to happen? he remembered what kind of father he had. I'm just curious. Do you know what kind of father you have? Before he left home, he overlooked his father's noble traits. And he took all those things for granted because he was fixated on parties and pleasures. And he was impressed only with himself. His dad seemed old-fashioned. His dad seemed boring. But when he came to a dead end on the path he chose, he realized how sad it was that he was now envious of what the pigs were eating, and he began to view his father very differently. Maybe you're at a point in your life where you've just kind of ignored your Father in heaven, despite how great he is, despite what a wonderful Father he is. And maybe this is the time that you're beginning to see him more realistically and truthfully. Well, this young man's father's hired hands were living better than he was. So even though he'd ruined his chance to be a faithful son, maybe he could go home, maybe he could just work for his dad. And if his dad allowed it, he wouldn't go hungry, he'd have a roof over his head. So he decided he would go home. He would admit that he'd been an idiot. He would beg for a chance to just be an employee of his father. Perspective is everything. It's everything. A short time before, he was dissatisfied with being his father's son. Now he would be honored to just be one of his father's servants. Before, home was the last place he wanted to be. He saw everything that was wrong with it. And now he couldn't think of a better place on earth to spend his days. I know most of you, maybe all of you have heard this story before, but can you imagine hearing it for the first time? Can you imagine listening to Jesus, seeing that the story is unfolding and wondering, what is the Father going to do when he gets home? Would he give him the silent treatment for a while? Would he see him coming and go to another part of the house, avoid him? Would he turn him away, send a servant to the edge of the property to say, oh no, you left this place. You made it clear you didn't want to be here. You dishonored your father. Would he make him beg in front of the rest of the family and all the servants and just make him beg until it was so awkward and excruciating that no one could stand it? Well, a moment ago, we left off with the son deciding to go home. Let's pick up at verse 20. But while the son was still a long way off, his father saw him. That tells us something, doesn't it? His father saw him because his father was looking for him. And his father was filled with anger toward him. No. His father was filled with disgust for him. No. His father was filled with compassion for him. Some fathers would be filled with anger and disgust. He had a different kind of father who was filled with compassion for him. The father ran to his son and threw his arms around him and kissed him. And the son said, "Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you." Those words sound familiar? That's the speech he was writing in the pig pen. "Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son." But he doesn't get to give the rest of his speech. His mea culpa is interrupted. And the father says, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast. Let's celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. Now, don't picture this scene through 21st century eyes, as tough as it is for us not to do that. When Jesus told this story, he was speaking to a culture in which honorable men did not run. It was considered undignified. The more influential you were, the less likely it would be that you would run. Men only ran when they were serving more powerful men. Dignified, privileged people walked. They sauntered like a bride coming down the aisle to be married. But not this father. He was a different kind of father. He wasn't concerned about his own dignity. He was overcome with love for his son. He didn't want to withhold his affection. He didn't contain his enthusiasm. He didn't play the role of the offended father, determined to maximize the humiliation of his wayward son. He ran. He threw his arms around him. He kissed him. I picture him sobbing, heaving over his son and saying, "Thank God, thank God," over and over. And he gives instructions. Put the best robe on him. Put a ring on his finger. That means he still is one of the leaders of this household. Prepare the best meal. Why? Well, look again at the start of verse 24. For this son of mine was dead and is, say those last two words with me, alive again. Alive again. It's a resurrection. He's back from the dead. It wasn't just a homecoming. It wasn't just a good decision. It wasn't just a turnaround. When that young man went home to his father and received a new life or a new lease on life, it was a resurrection. Hope he got no lice when he got home. That would not be good. For the father, it was like his son had been dead and had come back to life. And that's what happens when you and I turn back to our Father. That's how he responds, and that's how he treats us. And friend, that's why we're exploring this passage on Easter weekend. The Bible says Jesus was the firstborn from among the dead. That means he was the most important person to rise from the dead. It means he would not be the only person to rise from the dead. And we know that's true physically. I mean, those of us who've trusted Christ, we know the promise that when we die, our spirits separate from our bodies. And when Jesus returns, our spirits, what animates our bodies right now, our spirits will return with him. Our bodies will be resurrected. They will be made perfect. They will be made incorruptible. They will be made such that they can never die again. Our spirits and our bodies will reunite and will live with the Lord forever. That's the promise of the ultimate resurrection. But the resurrection is not just something that occurs at the end of history when Jesus returns. It begins now. And we can celebrate being alive again right now. We can experience it starting now. It happens when we believe that Jesus lived, that he died on the cross to pay the penalty for our sins, and that he rose from the grave to demonstrate his power over death. In fact, when a person believes those things, the Bible actually instructs him or her, the Bible instructs all of us who believe to do something that is a reenactment of the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus. Do you know what that something is? It's called baptism. And Jesus wants every person who believes in him to experience baptism. Look at Romans 6, verse 4. We were therefore buried with him through baptism into death, in order that just as Christ was raised from the dead through the glory of the Father, we too may live a new life. Buried, resurrected. Sometimes when people are baptized, you can hear the baptizer say, buried with Christ, as they go under the water. And then you can hear the baptizer say, raised to live a new life as they come up out of the water. I guess that part is for us because the other person has water in their ears. But it is a reminder to us, isn't it? That we can begin living the resurrected life now. That a person who has been dead in his or her sin can come alive again through Jesus Christ. And that's why we're doing something this Easter weekend that we haven't done on an Easter before and that we haven't been able to do for a while since before COVID. We are giving everyone who comes to Westside this weekend the opportunity to believe in Jesus and to be baptized into Christ. And we know that most of you, perhaps all of you, did not come here expecting to be baptized into Christ, but we are inviting you to be baptized into Christ anyway. To be honest, we didn't know that we were going to offer you the chance to be baptized until a few days ago. But I kept looking at this passage and I kept seeing those words, alive again. And I realized that we needed to provide this moment. So here we are and here you are. Our team has prepared everything and is ready for you today. I'm not sure if you realize it, but all of the people, the thousands of people who were baptized that we read about in our Bibles, none of them got up that morning knowing they would be baptized. None of them went to that moment where they heard Jesus teach, or where they heard the apostles teach about Jesus, knowing that they were going to be baptized. What happened is that they heard and they believed and they wanted it to be for them. And they were told, if you want to receive this, then be baptized into Christ. Experience this death, this resurrection into a new life. So if you're younger than junior high age and you're interested in baptism, we have a special set of instructions for you. We want you to let us know as soon as possible that you're interested, and we would like for you to walk through our baptism preparation. Because we want to make sure you're not one of the people who later says, well, I got baptized in an emotional moment, but I don't really know what it meant. I want you, and we want you to know what it means. So as excited as we are for people to be baptized, for those who are younger than sixth grade, we want you to walk through a journey where you can learn about baptism, and we'd love to start talking to you about that as soon as possible. If you're in junior high or high school, and your parents give permission for you to be baptized today, then you can do that today. You're welcome to do that. If you haven't been in high school or junior high school for a long time, or you're recently out of high school, then we would love to invite you to say yes to Jesus and to be baptized today. In fact, if you believe in Jesus and you haven't been in water and been immersed for baptism, I actually have the same question for you that Ananias had for Saul, who became the Apostle Paul after he was baptized. I have the same question that he asked Saul. What are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on the name of the Lord. Friend, why wait? Since those people in the Bible who got baptized on a given day didn't know they were going to do it, why did you have to know you were going to do it when you woke up? Why can't you decide to do it now? Now, those people got up, went to hear the gospel, they were baptized, and they went home wet. In your case, you're not going to have to go home soaking wet, maybe a little damp, okay? We've got Alive Again t-shirts. Now, I don't want you to be baptized to get a t-shirt. I know how much we love t-shirts, okay? I have heard that just like a fast pass at Disney gets you to the front of the line, if you wear an Alive Again t-shirt in heaven, you will go to the front of the line. I'm just saying. And we have towels, and so you can get dried off. We have plastic bags. You can protect your precious car. We really have thought of everything. We have a place for your things right by where you're baptized. There's someone who will watch over those things. We know there are a lot of opportunities to use your phone for sin, but we actually don't want to baptize your phone because it would die, but it would not be alive again. Our team's wearing masks the whole way. We've thought of everything to give you the opportunity to say yes to Jesus. And if there's something in you saying that you should seize this moment, that you should say yes, don't let anything stop you. I'll go first. All right. Not a plant. Right? That's awesome. And I'll tell you and I'll tell the other folks who are going to respond how to do that today. We've got everything ready, but only you can seize this opportunity. Now, if you've been baptized but not by immersion, then we encourage you to come and be immersed for baptism today for really one simple reason. That's how Jesus was baptized. And he said, I'm doing this to fulfill righteousness. I'm doing this to show you what's right. So come and be immersed for baptism today. If you were baptized in the past, but you're like one of those young people that I described earlier, we never tell people you need to be rebaptized if they've already been immersed. But sometimes people say, I want to be rebaptized, and we certainly are glad to help that happen today. So in a moment, two things are going to happen simultaneously. I'm going to ask us to stand together, and I'm going to begin praying. And those of us who are already immersed believers in Jesus will stay and will share in communion. But as I begin praying, I'd like for you and I'd like for everyone who's going to join you just to make your way out of your row as I begin to pray. You can go out of the doors in the back, and then you can head this direction. And right over here behind the cafe, you're going to see a guy with a baptism sign. And if you would just walk his direction, we have a team of folks who are ready to make you comfortable and to help you as we wait for you to be baptized in just a few moments. And if you're with someone who's going to be baptized, if you're with someone considering it, then will you just encourage that person? If you know they believe, then encourage that person today. But so that you can see their baptism, don't walk back here with them, because you won't be able to see back here. Watch the baptism out here, and then you can meet them at the photo booth, or you can meet them over here behind the cafe. We're just going to take them down the hallway that goes down this side into this area in the back, and some folks will show them where to get ready. Look, we have people to make sure you don't have a wardrobe malfunction. We have people who will answer all your questions, take care of every need that you have. So now's the time. Let's stand together. And as I begin to pray, if you want to say yes to being baptized into Christ today, then I hope you'll make your way out. I'm planning to come out, and I'm just going to fist bump you as you're making your way to get ready, because I want to celebrate with you. I want to be one of the first people to celebrate with you. So I'll see you over here in just a moment. Let's pray, and as I begin to pray, go ahead and make your way out for baptism if you want to say yes today.